Okay, Pennywise Popper with Affinity, match 3. We get to be on the play, and our hand is a bunch of lands. However, we have 2 Thoughtcast, which is arguably the best card in our deck besides Atog, so we're going to keep. And we don't do anything turn 1, and we pass the turn. Thornwood Falls. Very interesting land. We could be playing against Turbo Fog, which is a deck that I saw earlier today that I've only seen a couple times total in my entire Popper career. Could be playing against Infect or Boggles, whichever you prefer. Alright, so our opponent passes. We get to play a Thoughtcast for 1 mana. Free Frogmite. Another Thoughtcast for 1 mana. Flare Husk. Okay, we have 2 Flings, which is not particularly good unless we have a 4-power creature or an Atog. And we drew a lot of lands, which I was not hoping to draw off of double Thoughtcast. Our opponent cycled the Tranquil Thicket on our end step. Gitaxian Probe. Okay, that indicates some sort of fast deck. Possibly Infect or Boggles, as I mentioned before. I haven't seen either of those decks in quite a long time, so I'm not sure exactly what to expect from either of them. Glistener Elf. Okay, so it is, in fact. We might have to use this Fling as a really bad shock, potentially. Ooh, there's the Atog. Perfect. And we actually can Atog plus Fling this turn with 7 artifacts, so we can do it for 15. So if our opponent takes 3, then we can take them to 1. So yeah, let's go ahead and attack first. It's going to look really weird attacking into these infect creatures, but I'm going to do it anyway. And we're going to pass the turn. And we'll see if our opponent can kill us right now. So they already Gitaxian probed earlier, but they know we have the Fling, and now they get to know again, I guess. Now actually we can Fling anytime we want to and kill them. So unless they have Counter Magic main deck, which they absolutely could for protecting their infect creatures, they should be dead on board. Alright, our opponent's going to attack first. We're going to block because even if we get a -1/-1 counter on our Atog, we still have enough damage to kill them. And we'll see what our opponent does. We'll make them make the first move. Giant Growth, okay. We can take 4 Infect, that's not a problem. Okay, and damage resolves. We get 4 Infect. Our Atog is a little bit smaller. And our opponent is still dead on board if they don't have Counter Magic or Life Gain. And we can do it in response to a Thornwood Falls trigger. Or we can just do it after attacking next turn, which is even better. So I just checked online on MTG Goldfish. Yes, shameless plug. I just checked online because I wanted to see what counterspells Infect usually played main deck. It looks like they don't typically play counterspells main deck. So we're going to deal a little bit more damage to them, and then we're going to Atog right now. There is a world where even if they dispel our Fling, that a Carapace Forger back on blocking duty might be able to help us survive long enough to win anyway. I don't think that's the case, but it'd be nice to think so. Alright, we'll play Carapace Forger first, in case this all goes to pot. And we're going to start sacrificing stuff. And we're going to Fling, targeting our opponent. Float a mana, sacrifice the Atog, and see if we can win. Our opponent floats a blue to scare us into thinking they have a dispel, but it turns out they just know how to tap concede. Alright, we need to go to sideboarding. So against Infect, I'm going to bring in my 3 Electrickery for sure, my 2 Journey to Nowhere for sure, just because their creatures are so important. And for now, I'm not going to bring in Pyroblast. So it can be used to counter their counter spells. So if they have something they brought in to deal with Fling or to deal with the removal on their creatures, we could counter it. However, this doesn't deal with their creatures, it doesn't deal with Apostle's Blessing, it doesn't deal with most of their giant growth effects, probably any of their giant growth effects, so it's turned off versus enough of their deck that I do not want to bring it in. If I see that they have a lot of blue disruption after boarding, then I can potentially try to sideboard it in for game 3. The 5 cards I'm going to sideboard out are Slumber Hoverguard, because it takes too long to get online, and 1 Springleaf Drum, because I'm going to have less creatures available, because I'm going to be throwing everything in front of the artifact creatures. Alright, game number 2, we are on the draw. We have no removal in hand, I'm not counting Fling, and we only have 1 land. So the best possible start would be Great Furnace Star, turn 2, well, a land and then a Prism, and even then that's us not doing anything for the first 2 turns. We could also draw a Galvanic Blast, but I think this hand is pretty bad and we have to mulligan it. Alright, we have no land, so we're going to mulligan again. We have 1 land and still no removal, but I really don't want to go down to 4, so I think we have to keep this 5. Flare Husk, it's a chump blocker, which is cool. It adds to affinity for Mirror Enforcer and Thoughtcast, so I think we're going to put it on top, even though it's not great. Opponent leads with a tap land. We'll lead with a Flare Husk. And we'll see how many infect creatures they drop now. Blight Mamba. Okay, so this is a regenerating one. Okay, so we can play Star and pass. And we're probably going to chump block this turn. It's actually technically not a chump block because the Blight Mamba itself is a 1/1. So they're going to have to spend 2 mana to regenerate it. Okay, there's Rancor. See if our opponent has a pump spell as well so they don't have to regenerate. I have a feeling mulling to 5 and then not drawing any removal is going to not be good enough to beat this infect deck. Mutagenic Growth for life. Germ goes away, we take 4 poison. And we draw Fling. So we're going to have to crack this star here. I'm going to crack it for red, just in case we draw Galvanic Blast. Though I guess our opponent could just regenerate, couldn't they? Alright, there's a Flare Husk. Pass the turn. Our opponent Nature's Claims our land. I'm wondering why they didn't do that before they let us go to our turn. In general, that would have been a better play. That way we wouldn't have even got the mana from it. We couldn't have even cast this other Flare Husk. We make our opponent spend 2 mana to regenerate. We take another 2 infect damage. Okay. If our opponent has any pump spell at all here and goes for it, then they win. They Nature's Claim our land. So unfortunately, one of the downsides of playing Affinity, even though it is very strong game 1, is that there are very powerful artifact hate cards in people's sideboards. So Nature's Claim, Gleeful Sabotage, Ancient Grudge, Dust to Dust. So we didn't really get to play a game this game, so hopefully we will in game 3. Alright, we get to play first, which is good for us. And we have our Electrickery, and we have some lands, and we have a Prophetic Prism to fix our green mana for this Forger, so we're going to keep. We're going to lead off on Husk turn 1, instead of holding up Electrickery. Our opponent has Mull to 6 and Scryed to the bottom, so let's see if that mulligan slows them down enough for us to deal with them in this game. Glistener Elf, okay. So we're going to lead off with Electrickery, force our opponent to use Mutagenic Growth if they want to save their creature. They do, okay. And we'll play our land, play a Flare Husk, and a free Frogmite, and pass the turn. We could have potentially attacked with our first Germ before we went for the Electrickery, but I wanted to leave it back to block. Now we can triple block if our opponent tries to attack and represent a pump spell, because even then a +3/+3 effect will end up with the Glistener Elf dead. And I don't really mind losing these Germs. Alright, our opponent plays an Ichor Claw. That's a little bit more difficult to block. So we'll start off with the Prism, draw a Mirror Enforcer. We get to cast that for free, but we cannot cast our Carapace Forger yet. I'm going to get my beatdown on, attack with this Frogmite, and leave back a 4/4 and some 1/1s to block, so I can decide whether I want to try to actually block or chump block. Opponent plays a tap land. It's going to attack with both. Okay. So I think what I'm going to do here is block and block. And then our opponent can try to save one of these creatures, but they probably won't be able to save both of them. Groundswell. Okay, so they're going to save that one and take down our Mirror Enforcer. No trample, so we don't take any infect damage from that. Journey to Nowhere. Kill their only creature. And next turn we get to play a Carapace Forger. So if our opponent doesn't have an immediate creature follow-up, we probably have got this. Ooh, Blighted Agent. So they're going to be drawing toward 3 cards in hand. So can they deal 9 with 3 cards? That is the question. Alright, our opponent's blocking here, interestingly enough. I'm not particularly sure why. They really shouldn't be using those mutagenic growths defensively, as far as I know. So I'm going to play Atog here instead of Carapace Forger. And the reason is that it threatens lethal next turn, because I have 6 artifacts on the board, so it can attack as a 13/14. Our opponent Gitaxian probes, so they know we have a Carapace Forger. The Blighted Agents are another reason to play the Pyroblast. Probably a very, very good reason that I should have been considering. But I haven't seen Infect in a long time, and I was only thinking about the other 2 Infect creatures. I wasn't really considering which other ones that they haven't played. If I had thought about it, I would have remembered that Blighted Agent existed and probably brought it in, but I unfortunately did not. So we do not have any Pyroblasts in our deck at the moment. Alright, we're going to attack first, and our opponent is forced to block Atog or to have some interaction for it. Alright, they're just going to block. I'm just going to let this resolve. They're going to Groundswell. I can sacrifice one thing in order to eat the Blighted Agent, so I think I'm going to do that. Well, the problem is that we're going to have 3 -1/-1 counters on the Atog afterward. So I'd only be doing it to kill the Blighted Agent, but I think it's still worth it. So I'm going to sacrifice a land since I don't really need it right now. I only need 2 lands to cast both the spells in my hand. And I can lead up with another Atog and pass. And the first Atog dies, as we said, because it had 3 -1/-1 counters on it from its interaction with an infect creature. Our opponent rankers our own Atog, and they're presumably going to concede now. Yep, they did. Okay, so we were able to race our infect opponent. I still don't think they should have played that mutagenic growth defensively just to take down a simple Frogmite. I'm not sure exactly what they were doing there. Even if they had 3 cards in hand, I don't think they could have killed us. They would have needed 3+3/+3 effects to go from 1 to 10. They could have also Groundswelled plus a land, but that means one of their cards in hand would have had to be a land at that point. So I don't know they could win an aggressive game, but I also don't know that Infect can ever win a defensive game. But regardless, we took down the match, and we are 3-0. So we're feeling great, and we are on to match 4.